students, welcome back to the video series of Effective Technical Communication. This is Dhruvi Bhatt here. Students, in the previous lecture, we discussed about the definition of communication. We also discussed what is meant by technical communication. We discussed about importance of communication, importance of technical communication. Also, we discussed about the difference between general communication and technical communication. Today, we would be discussing about process of communication. Going into detail about technicalities, let's try to understand that what exactly is the process of communication. Blah, 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 blah. Ma'am, does communication too have any process? What is there in communication except just speaking and listening? Is there anything else to it? Do we need to understand what is the process of communication? The answer is yes. Communication is much more than what you already think it is. Before moving on to the process of communication, first let's try to understand that what exactly is meant by process. Students, process is nothing but a set of activities arranged in a particular sequence. When you have a set of activities which are arranged into a sequential order, then it is known as a process. Students, communication too has a specific set of activities which must be arranged in a specific order, and this particular order is known as process of communication. Let's try to understand that what exactly is the process of communication. Okay, here we have the communication process where there are two basic entities. Firstly, we have the sender who is trying to send some message. Secondly, we have the receiver to whom the sender is trying to send this message. The sender wants to send some message for which obviously he or she would be needing a channel or a medium. But before sending the message, the sender undergoes a process which is known as encoding. You need to encode the message before you send this particular message. Why so? I will discuss it in the next slide with you, but please remember that you need to encode the message before sending the message to the receiver. The medium is used to send this message to the receiver. Medium acts as a channel or the connection between the sender and the receiver. Receiver here receives this particular message. He firstly decodes the message. Obviously, encoding must have the similar decoding with it. He decodes the message, he understands the message, and lastly gives back the feedback back to the sender. Obviously, students, feedback is a very necessary and important step here. These are different elements of the communication process, each of which we would like to study in our next slide with the help of an example. Moving on. Here, students, this is an important question here. So you need to understand each of the element very properly. I would like to explain to you each and every element one by one. First and foremost, every one of you understood that there is a sender. This is an example here. Say for example, our sender is John. Okay, the example has one sender John and the receiver Jane. Remember this thing and we will move on with the example. Our sender here can be any person who wants to transmit some message. Okay, the sender can have any type of message which he or she wants to transmit. It can be an information, an idea, an opinion which he wants to share. Okay, the sender might be having any type of information which he or she is trying to transmit. It can be an idea, an opinion, or anything which the sender wants to send to the receiver for some specific purpose. For example, me here is acting as a sender here. I am trying to impart the information which I already have with you. So this is also one type of communication. Please remember, students, that sender is a person who initiates the process of communication. He or she is the initiator of the process of communication, and he or she is initiating the communication for the receiver. Remember the name of our receiver? Yes, she is our Jane. Okay, here our John wants to transmit some information to our receiver Jane. We have two parties involved here. sender, who is the initiator of the communication, and receiver, for whom the communication is meant. For example, I am the initiator of communication here, and you students are the receivers for whom this communication is meant for. Okay, but students, before transmitting the message, we need to do a simple cycle here. The sender wants to send a message, the receiver gets the message, and the receiver gives feedback. Ma'am, this process is enough, this much is enough, and it is very much likely to be a complete process. But this is entirely wrong, students. This is not what actually happens. This is not what happens every time. The sender does not transmit the information without thinking. Do you transmit any information without thinking? Say for example, you want to go to Goa for a trip. Do you just directly go to your father and say that, Dad, I want to go to a trip to Goa and we want to just go and chill out? No, that is not the way, right? You firstly think that, okay, I need to find a space, a good mood of my father. At that point of time, I would meet him and I would cook up a story that all my friends are going to Goa. I have not gone for a trip for a long amount of time. I also want to go to Goa. So, will you please allow me to go to Goa? This is how we actually mask our technical language with flowery words. Here is where encoding comes into play, students. You do not just directly tell your thoughts to the receiver, but encode it in the way that the receiver can understand and interpret. So students, here encoding comes into action. Here our John is thinking that Jane always hangs out with her friend at a nearby burger store and he wants to ask her out on a date, but he does not directly tell her so. What does he tell? He sends her a message that, do you want to hang out at a burger shop after you have completed your work? This is what is the actual message. Encoding converts your thoughts into actual message by thinking about the receiver, by thinking about the thoughts of the receiver. You encode by keeping in mind some specific things like what is the type of the receiver, what is the language the receiver understand, what is the emotion, what is your emotional bonding with the receiver, which is the manner in which the receiver would get you better or would understand you better. You need to think of all these things, and only after thinking all these things you would encode your message. Okay, so here our John also thought all this and encoded a message and sent this message to Jane. But how? He texted the message. This text or the mobile phone is something which is known as a channel. This is our important element, the channel which is used for sending the communication from sender to receiver. Right now this YouTube video is a channel from which I am able to reach to you. There can be different types of channel, and depending on the urgency of message, you can make use of any of the channels. Different types of channels are, you can send a message via email, via text message, by calling the person you want, or maybe just by communicating face to face. There are different types of channels. The medium of air can also act as a channel. Right now in these days we know that video calls or video conferences also act as a channel. So students, there are different types of channel. Our John here used a very ultimate channel for asking her out, that is a message. But when the receiver receives the message, the opposite part of encoding takes place here. She here thinks that what exactly John is trying to tell. She tries to decode this thing. She decodes that John is asking me out on a date, but he already has a girlfriend and he is just messing around. So I need to let him down. That is why she understood the communication very properly here. She got the message, and according to the decoding which she understood, she passed on the message. She gave out a feedback back to John, where she told that no, she has to cook dinner for her kids and she is not available for going out. So this is known as feedback from the receiver to the sender. Students, we missed an important part here. In the channel, any type of channel you talk about, there is something known as interference or noise. Okay, here I'm not talking about constant bickering which is moving in background, or the echo effects which are coming in background. These are not the only noises. Yes, they are also one type of noise, but in a channel there can be basically two types of noise. Remember this, in a channel there are two types of noise. One is mechanical noise, which is due to the faulty channel. There is some noise in the channel, maybe faulty line, maybe some birds chirping, or maybe some background noise, which is causing this communication to be very disrupted. Okay, but students, there is second type of noise too, which is known as semantic noise. Semantic noise is the grammatical noise. If your message itself is faulty, if your grammar is incorrect, then even if the student or even if the receiver, sorry, in my mind receivers are only students, nobody else can receive. Okay, even if the receivers receive your message very perfectly, very clearly, they will not be able to understand the message if there is a fault or problem in the message itself. This kind of noise is known as semantic noise. Semantic noise is the noise due to errors in the message itself. We learned here that in a channel there can be two types of noises. One is mechanical noise due to faulty channel. Second is semantic noise due to the incorrect transmission of message, due to incorrect formation of message. Okay. That's it about the process of communication, students. I hope you understood the process of communication nicely and you got to know all the elements very properly. That's all about the process of communication. We will move on to the next topic for right now. Thank you so much from my side. This is Dhruvi Bhatt signing off. Until next time. Bye-bye.